Oh, yes, that's right. You mean one of the most common occupations since the beginning of time, and certainly in the United States of America, construction, contracting work. No native-born citizens want to do that. Speaking of not going anywhere, that's pretty much anyone who decides to sit down with J.D. Vance.
Yeah. They keep making this mistake.
Yeah.
I'm going to get him.
When I see J.D. Vance go up against someone who's clearly biased, the left, in these interviews, it reminds me of that scene in Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou where Jeff Goldblum, I think it's Jeff Goldblum, disciplines the other guy's dog with a rolled-up newspaper. That's basically what J.D. Vance is doing with these interviewers. Remember they were saying that Walz had a higher favorability than J.D. Vance? Yeah. Remember they were saying, this VP debate could be really important. And then they said, it doesn't really matter at all.
Really. Mm-hmm.
I do think it had an impact. I do think that the VP debate had an impact, and that's a big reason that Donald Trump is gaining momentum. I think that Kamala Harris is very unlikable, and I think J.D. Walz was really brought in just because they thought he was folksy and likable.
Tim Walz.
What did I say, J.D. Walz?
J.D. Walz.
Oh, son of a bitch. Admonish me.
Yeah.
That's bad. I really think that I think that Tim Walz was brought in to try and counterbalance the intense dislikability of Kamala Harris. He doesn't really have many accomplishments, so that's why they brought him in. J.D. Vance was brought in because obviously, Hillbilly Elegy was very popular, but I think he was brought in to shore up the base with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And because he is a surgeon with interviews. He is able to handle interviews from opposing viewpoints, and that shouldn't really happen in what we're supposed to see as unbiased media. Have you seen, by the way, Kamala Harris, the gaslighting hour she's saying, and Donald Trump won't do a second debate. He won't sit down with 60 Minutes. Why is he hiding and riding out the clock? I'm like, oh, okay, we see exactly what you're doing.
After he asked for 3 debates, and by the way, the next thing they're pivoting to is release your medical records. He's like, I've released doctor stuff, and I'm doing 2-hour stand-up rallies. What do you want from me?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's see Biden's medical record. What are you talking about?
Yeah, now finally she's concerned about the fitness of a person being a president of the United States.
Exactly. See how you trimmed that turkey neck, lady.
What I see is I see desperation.
Yes.
And I see desperation from Walz. Maybe you guys could bring up, there was a Walz interview this weekend, actually, where he really was flailing quite a bit as a good contrast to J.D. Vance. And I ask you, look, setting this up, have you been impressed with this guy? And do you understand that we are really not that far away from, if something were to happen, God forbid, with President Trump, a J.D. Vance presidency? How would you feel about that? A lot of people haven't really discussed that at this point. So, were you
I'm good with it. I just gave you a thumbs up.
All right. So before we get to J.D. Vance, let's set this up because they have been pulling no punches. The Trump campaign released a scathing new attack ad highlighting the southern border crisis.
Open borders, deadly consequences.
Border crisis. Record high crossings are putting a strain on cities across America.
It is a full-blown invasion.
Armed Venezuelan gang members storming an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado.
When people talk about migrant crime, this is what they're talking about. Biden and Harris had created a program to bring them in under humanitarian parole.
I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals.
More than 13,000 illegal immigrants convicted of murder have been released into the United States.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah, we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Manuel Hernandez was booked by Colleyville police just 2 days earlier and released the day before the robbery.
That's pretty tough.
He's winning on that issue by quite a bit.
That's a bit like the Scrooged Christmas Carol promo.
Yeah.
Like, show me Scrooged. They're already voting, Mr. Trump. They're already voting for you, Mr. Trump. That's not enough! They have to be so scared to miss it! So a lot of the interviews centered around immigration, around illegal immigration. They tried to press J.D. Vance. They tried to bring up some facts that aren't facts. So let's go through these here. One was with, I believe, the New York Times, and one was with ABC. Let's go New York Times first. Lulu Garcia Navarro, not to be confused with Navarro, former Republican on The View, tried to press Vance on, and this is weird. I don't know why they think this is a winning argument when they're trying to obviously help Kamala Harris, saying that, well, you actually need illegal immigrants because we need them to do good-paying American jobs.
The reason that there is a housing crisis is that not enough houses have been built.
And that we have 25 million people who shouldn't be here.
Well, I mean, this is the thing.
I think it's both.
I know you do. I don't think that many people who look into this agree with you, but about a third of the construction workforce in this country is Hispanic. Of those, a large portion are undocumented. So how do you propose to build all the housing necessary that we need in this country by removing all the people who are working in construction?
Well, I think it's a fair question because we know that back in the 1960s when we had very low levels of illegal immigration, Americans didn't buy houses, didn't build houses. But of course they did. Gotcha, bitch. I'm being sarcastic, of course, and sort of saying, don't Lou, the assumption that because a large number of home builders now are using undocumented labor, that's the only way to build homes. I think, again,
the country is much bigger. The need is much bigger.
So let me give you the truth here. Okay, let's go to then and now. In 1969, undocumented migrants, they made up about 0.3% of the population. We had a housing surplus.
Wow.
Okay, that was a big deal back then. Now, we actually have had record inflation. Homes are about 2.5 times more expensive than they were in the 1960s. And undocumented, let's just say illegal aliens, make up 5% of the population.
It's a huge difference. 0.3% versus 5%.
And now we have a housing shortage of 4.5 million units. So the point that he's making, they're like, people don't agree if they look into it. Well, hold on a second. We had fewer illegal aliens back then, and we had homes that were more affordable and more homes that were built, so we had a surplus. Now we have a shortage, and we have about 20 times the rate of illegal aliens, and people can't afford them.
And the houses in the 60s are still standing.
Yes.
Well, some of them are. Not in Detroit.
Not in Detroit. I get that argument that you say that 25 million people are here that shouldn't be here, and that's not a contributor.
Right.
Well, it's not a so you take 25 million people and you get rid of them, there won't be more homes?
Right.
Is that what she's saying?
Yes. Yeah. I was about to say, she's like, we can't build all the homes we need. I'm like, well, guess what? When you get rid of 25 million people that don't need to be here, frees up some housing.
Yes, it does.
It makes me feel like I'm missing something here.
Yes.
Yeah. No, you're not.
It was a guess.
You're
not missing
simple
anything.
Supply and demand.
Yeah, it seems like it would be very simple.
She was like, 1/3 of the people are immigrants that work in construction, and a large portion. Give me a number.
Yeah, how many of these people?
Undocumented workers that are specifically building houses.
But don't you?
We've already established that you don't think black people could do this, or Asian people, or white people could do this job. We've already established that, Ms. Navarro. You think only Hispanic people can do construction.
Yeah.
Now, how many of them are illegal?
Well, and here's another point. I've watched this Overton window shift where they used to say these people are only doing jobs that Americans don't want to do. They're cleaning. Remember what was her name? Osborne, the daughter. They're cleaning your toilets. They're picking lettuce. And now it's like, oh yes, that's right. You mean one of the most common occupations since the beginning of time, and certainly in the United States of America, construction, contracting work. No native-born citizens want to do that. We've now moved well beyond manual labor minimum wage jobs, and we're talking about highly skilled jobs, carpentry, electricians, plumbing. Yeah, this doesn't make sense anymore. They used to make the argument, they're only taking the jobs Americans won't do. She now just made the argument they're needed to do the kinds of jobs that Americans actually really want to do and are good paying jobs, but we need them so that we can pay them less.
The same jobs that she would have be unionized. Right. In every state, so that no illegals could have. That's where it gets confusing. You start advocating for two different things.
I don't think there's a single white guy in this office who hasn't worked construction at some point or another.
Yeah, I was going to say I've worked construction. It was union work, so it's a little different than regular home construction in Texas or Arizona, or whatever. But union work in Seattle, dude, there was no illegals on the job, not a single one. You couldn't even get in the job site.
Mine wasn't union work, but I did some with Johnny Boy in the summer, and I did some here too as well, and it was good paying. It was great. It was summer work. Yep. And the guys I worked with were all older white gentlemen who, by the way, made a good living. So have you guys noticed that shift?
It's in the Amish community, though, so let's be honest.
That's true. Well, everything was wood. By the way, we build one hell of a rotary phone. I don't know why we're allowed rotary phones and not smartphones, but we are allowed rotary phones.
Well, they're made out of wood.
Yes.
So you gotta watch that rock, though. You might lose a.
But if it's your neighbor, you can hear him clear as a bell. Here's the next exchange. Here is Navarro, by the way, of course, an unbiased journalist. Again, talking about immigration, unemployment, and trying to push back on J.D. Vance. He gives them no wiggle room.
You absolutely could re-engage folks into the American labor market. This is, I think,
to work in construction.
Of course, you could.
Pause. Pause. You could get what? You could get Americans to work construction? Tell me you're out of touch with America without telling me you're out of touch with America. Really? Wait, hold on. You mean to tell me that there are middle-class working Americans who are willing to work construction and make a decent living? Yeah, not everyone goes to Princeton, sweetheart.
That's so funny.
She expects the only way people get into construction is standing outside of Home Depots.
Yes, exactly.
That's different. That's day laborers.
That lady lives in a multi-million-dollar home and thinks that it's just really cheap and easy to do it, to build it.
Yeah, I know.
Idiot.
I remember that you said they're not taking any jobs that you don't want. She can't believe that plenty of Americans would like to work good-paying construction jobs. Okay, let's continue with the clip.
There's 4.1%.
Most
people
unemployment rate, Lulu. This is important.
But most people who don't work can't work in the regular economy. They're in the military. They're parents. They're sick. They're old.
Military.
What?
They might not want to work in construction.
The unemployment rate does not count labor force participation dropouts. And again, this is one of the really deranged things that I think illegal immigration does to our society, is it gets us in a mindset of saying we can only build houses with illegal immigrants when we have 7 million, just men, not even women, just men who have completely dropped out of the labor force. People say, well, Americans won't do those jobs. Americans won't do those jobs for below the table wages. They won't do those jobs for non-living wages. I want them to go searching in their own country for their own citizens. Sometimes people who may be struggling with addiction or trauma, get them re-engaged in American society. We cannot have an entire American business community that is giving up on American workers and then importing millions of illegal laborers. That is what we have thanks to Kamala Harris's border policies. I think it's one of the biggest drivers of inequality.
So to be clear, you think Americans work construction. I'm sure the media have a field day with that. Here's the truth, okay? We've fact-checked all of this. I really have no suggestions for J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
Let's look at the male labor force participation rates. 1969 was 80%, meaning 80% of able-bodied males were participating in the workforce. Today, that's 68.1%. 68.1%. So again, if what they were saying was true, we expect to see maybe the opposite trend or at least remain stable. We're not.
That's a question. Labor force participation trends. What is that? A specific type of job, or is that just
it means people who are actually involved in the workforce. So in other words, if you are unemployed for a certain amount of time, and then you say, you know what, I'm just not looking for a job anymore, you give up on life, they don't count you as unemployed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so if you have a 3% unemployment rate, let's say, with an 80% labor force participation rate, that's very different than a 3% unemployment rate when you only have a 68% labor force. But in other words, there are far more people out of a job. They're just not counted as unemployed.
Yeah.
Was I missing something too when she said military?
Yeah. I don't know
are military personnel not? Are they counted as unemployed?
They shouldn't be,
because they're quite employed.
No, they're not.
Okay.
Yeah. They're not. I don't know what she's saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a valid question.
Maybe?
She makes no sense.
She does make no sense.
And of course, this, by the way, follows the announcement. Some people think there might have been, a little bit of promo going on in Vance's all-American woman construction company with the results you see for yourself. He's trying to plug this. Yeah, it's an HGTV show.
I don't.
Had this car up there.
Well, I think that she should start with a shirt.
Here's another truth. The reason why is it's definitely cheaper to hire illegal immigrants than to pay Americans. So 2.1 million construction workers right now that we know of are paid under the table. You can go back to a video that I taped, I believe, in 2017, 2018, where I did the Home Depot thing.
Yeah.
And I stole the jobs of illegal aliens because people would say they're working for pennies. They were all working back then for $30 an hour. They were doing a project. The guy would drive up, say 6 hours, $200. And I'd say, you know what, I said, hey, you know what, I'll do it for 20 an hour. I'll do it for 15 an hour. This idea that these people, meaning illegal aliens, are being abused, exploited, and working jobs that Americans don't want to do it's just not true. And so, yes, it needs to be a multi-pronged approach. We need to go after not only the employers who employ these people illegally as a way to cut corners, but we also need to change our policy. This is really simple. This election, when people say, well, what is it that you would do? If I'm Donald Trump, if I'm J.D. Vance, say, okay, going to reduce the corporate tax rates so that people can employ more Americans. We're going to shut down the border and make sure that we stop these illegal crossings. We're going to deport some people, and we're going to open up our own energy, all of our own reserves so we can be a net energy exporter like we were under the Trump administration. Those three policies, we start those day one. That makes a huge difference. Just go with that. Let's go with another exchange here between ABC's Martha Raddatz, who's trying to fact check.
This one's the best.
Vance on the Venezuelan gangs. You've seen those, right? The roving migrant gangs. Just watch the clip.
People are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened. I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? You seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs.
Get him off the air. Get him off the
94
air.
executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
That was so wonderful to just drink in. She was waiting for her moment. She knew that this was going to come up, and it was going to be a line that he said, so I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you right there. Goes to her notes and gets obliterated because, yes, everybody's like, you think a handful's okay?
Well, he just showed right there that she does think it's okay.
Yes.
She thinks that people who live in apartment complexes don't deserve the same rights as everybody else. And that, a couple of apartment complexes are taken. No big deal. Those are low-income Americans. Nobody cares about them.
Exactly.
I'm on ABC with dumb hair.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still not convinced that wasn't a ghost interview.
It might have been.
But the immigration issue, I don't think there's an issue that highlights more clearly that the Democratic Party and the media, entertainment, industrial establishment, that they don't care about you. Right? We just saw it play out in real time where it's, well, actually, these people are just taking jobs that Americans don't want to do, or we need them so that we can build homes. In other words, they're saying, it doesn't matter that Americans could use the work.
Right.
These people matter just as much. I'm going to say something here that'll offend some people. In the context of the United States, okay, illegal immigrants don't matter as much. I'm not saying as human beings in the eyes of God. I'm saying as far as the rights, and by the way, privileges, and priority being given to, if you're going to give it to a group of people, native-born Americans, or people who are here legally, I'm going to say illegal aliens do not matter as much in this country as legal citizens. Deport them. Done. Hold on a second. It's only a handful of apartment complexes? Okay. If it's one apartment, not complex, one apartment, it's too much. Because that's someone who is being victimized.
Yeah.
By a predator who has no business being here in the first place. Do you put yourself in this situation? And we've talked about this quite a bit when we've done the Change My Minds. Imagine if you have any children or you have a wife or husband, okay? Your most loved relative is raped or murdered. Okay, it's terrible. It's awful. Now imagine how much harder of a pill that would be to swallow if you find out they were murdered by someone who had no business being here, who had a criminal record, and was cleared to come in anyway. Usually you're just mad at the world, right? Awful, tragic acts happen sometimes. It doesn't make it any less awful. But you're not mad at the world at that point. You have someone to be mad with. And that's the people who enacted that policy. And it's the media who tried to sell it as a virtue. So here's the truth. Venezuelan gangs have actually taken over multiple apartment complexes, not just in places like Colorado, but places like Texas as well. And the law firm that brought that issue to the Colorado police, by the way, is a Democratic organization, or at least overwhelmingly supports Democrats to the tune of 96.5% of their donations have gone to Democrats. So it shouldn't be a political issue, and it shouldn't be an issue that you dismiss. There are people, American citizens, who live in those apartments, and they live in hell. And it's so difficult for them to live with because they know that it is one of the few areas where government can actually do something. Let's be honest, the government can't fix everything. The government can't stop natural disasters. And even if FEMA was running like clockwork, they wouldn't be able to save everybody or help everybody. The government can't actually give you enough money so that they can save your business if you're going into bankruptcy, right? The government can't really change your day-to-day life all that much. But the government should have a military. The government should be able to protect the citizens of this country. And the government does have the ability to make sure that criminals are not coming here in the first place. It's one of the most basic functions of government. That's a really tough pill to swallow. And the media says it's just a handful. Well, it's not. It's not just a handful. It's millions of people who are affected by it every single year. And right now, they've actually taken over entire apartment complexes. Think of what that symbolizes. That means it's not just someone coming over the border in the middle of the night with a coyote. That means they've all migrated to one area. They've congregated and put together a plan, and no one has stopped them. That should happen, in my opinion, 0 times in a civilized country. So let's wrap this up. Right under the Kamala Biden administration, we've had record inflation, had a huge housing shortage. We've had men dropping out of the labor force at unbelievable rates. We've had illegal immigration, of course, at all-time highs. We've had 18 million at least when you just include the crossings, those getaways, the visa overstays, the fly-ins, right? Just that CBP1 app that we talked about. And all of this, and the media says it's not that big a deal. Why would you vote for Donald Trump? Mean tweets. Look at what has happened in this country in the last 3.5 years. I can't remember, and genuinely, if you can comment below, any time period in my life, 37, where we have seen the direct catastrophic results from government policy play out in one term. Then again, it's very, very rare that you have people who sign 90-something legislative actions, I believe it's 80-something executive orders, to undo all of the policies of the last guy and make it worse year over year over year. I don't remember that we've ever had that in my lifetime. I'm sure someone could give me some example that may be comparable. I think this is why Donald Trump may win in a landslide. There are enough Americans out there going, yeah, we feel the impact of this right now. 18 million in only 3 years. Yep, we see it. And I think that's why for the first time you have a majority of Americans who actually support some kind of a deportation program. And that maybe is why the National Border Patrol Council, who, by the way, Kamala Harris said endorsed her, in case you've forgotten.
Even the Border Patrol endorsed it. It was endorsed by the Border Patrol Union. The Border Patrol endorsed it.
Which is probably why the border agents actually endorsed the bill.
Oh, wait, sorry, did I... No, they endorsed her? No, sorry. This is what they actually did.
If we allow Borders R. Harris to win this election, every city, every community in this great country is going to go to hell. On behalf of the 16,000 men and women represented by the National Border Patrol Council, we strongly support and endorse Donald J. Trump for President of the United States.
Well, it's almost like they said the opposite.
That's weird.
Of what she said. And you've heard me say this. The strategy is lie, cheat. Lie, cheat. That's exactly what we see right here. Kamala Harris, where is it on the media right now that the National Border Patrol Council has endorsed Donald Trump? Wouldn't you think that the media, considering those are the people she's embarrassed, she has lied to, saying they've endorsed me, and I believe it was their pinned tweet for a while saying, no, we didn't. Yeah. But they hadn't officially endorsed Donald Trump. She told you something that was the opposite of the truth. A lie, we used to call it back in the day.
We used to call it.
She repeated it. The media didn't fact check it. She repeated it, I believe, on Oprah as well. She repeated it at least 3, 4, 5 times. Okay? And now the Border Patrol Council comes out and says, no, we actually endorsed Donald Trump. So lie. What happens now? They don't cover it. The next step is cheat. Do you understand that? They don't fear you catching them in their lies. They just make up another lie. And once the lies stop working, once they're not having enough of an impact, they cheat. Hey, if you're still watching, you can comment below or click this video playing in a box. Shut up. Shut up. You can tune in live weekdays, 10 a.m. Eastern, because that's the full show. Which you can say, shut
I didn't say anything.
I know you didn't say anything. I could feel it. Click like.